Welcome to the Explainer. Today, we're jumping right into a huge paradox that sits at the very heart of the Bible, the whole concept of war.
So here's the big question, right? Is the God of the Bible a peacemaker or a warmonger? It's a tension that has seriously puzzled scholars, critics, and believers for centuries. And honestly, it forces us to look way deeper into the text.
I mean, look at this. On one side, you've got one of the most famous moral laws in all of history. But then on the other side, you get these incredibly stark commands for total war. So how does that work? How can both of these things exist in the same book from the same divine being? Okay, let's really get into this.
Okay, so here's how we're going to break this all down. First, we'll look at the contradiction itself. Then, the literal picture of God as a warrior. After that, and this is the really cool part, we'll uncover a surprising clue in the original Hebrew. That'll lead us to the idea of a spiritual battlefield, and finally, what all this means for the definition of peace itself.
All right, first things first, let's just lay out the problem that's staring us all right in the face. And this isn't some small, obscure detail. We're talking about a major theme here.
The number here is just wild. The Hebrew word for war, sabah, shows up over 480 times in the Old Testament. When you see a number that big, you know this isn't just a footnote. It's woven right into the fabric of the story, which makes that contradiction we talked about absolutely impossible to ignore.
Okay, so let's follow this thread because it gets even more intense. The text doesn't just talk about wars happening around God. No, it paints a very clear picture of God as a central military figure.
You really can't get more direct than that, can you? This isn't an interpretation or some hidden metaphor here. It's a flat-out statement defining God's character, made right in the middle of a huge military victory.
And it doesn't stop there. The text just keeps doubling down, giving God all these military titles: Man of War, Yahweh Zebaoth, which literally means Lord of Armies. There was even a whole book, which is now lost, called the Book of the Wars of the Lord. So if you're just reading the text literally, the case looks pretty solid. God is a warrior. End of story.
But what if that's not the end of the story? What if our modern understanding of the word war is just missing a huge piece of the puzzle? This is where things get really fascinating because the key might be hiding in plain sight, right there in the ancient Hebrew.
The main Hebrew root word for to fight or to wage war is laham. You see it about 170 times, and on the surface, its meaning seems totally straightforward. But here is the twist, and it's a big one. That exact same root word, laham, also means to eat. Isn't that wild? It's a dual meaning that we completely lose in translation. So fighting and eating are somehow linked by the very same word.
And the connection goes even deeper. The Hebrew word for bread, lechem, as in Bethlehem, the house of bread, it comes directly from this root word, laham. So linguistically, you have this unbreakable chain connecting fighting to eating to bread. Now, that's almost certainly not a coincidence. It's pointing to a really profound metaphor. Okay, so this linguistic key, this connection between battle and bread, it's like it unlocks a totally new way to read the rest of the Bible. It suggests that maybe these wars are a kind of spiritual sustenance. And that helps us understand some of the most challenging things Jesus ever said.
Yeah, this is one of those verses that just makes you stop and go, wait, what? But if the whole concept of biblical war is connected to this idea of sustenance and an internal struggle, could this sword be for a different kind of battle entirely? Not one between countries, but one fought inside yourself.
And this idea of an internal battle gets hammered home all over the New Testament, which describes a whole arsenal for the soul. It talks about a breastplate, a shield, a helmet, and a sword, all these tools for a spiritual, not a physical battlefield. The focus explicitly shifts from armies to armor.
So here's the crucial takeaway here. The entire framework seems to pivot. The concept of war evolves from a literal external conflict to a metaphorical internal struggle. The battlefield moves from the plains of the Middle East to the landscape of the human soul.
And that brings us to our final and maybe the most important piece of this whole puzzle. If the war is spiritual, then what does that make peace?
See, in this framework, peace isn't just a passive state of quiet. It's not simply the absence of fighting. Instead, it's presented as the outcome of a victorious struggle. It's the prize you get only after the right battle has been won. This declaration from Jesus, "I have overcome the world," is presented as the very foundation for true peace.
This completely reframes the goal. It suggests peace isn't about avoiding a fight, but about winning the right one. The peace that's on offer only comes after that victory.
And that leaves us with one last big thought to consider. If the primary battlefield is internal, if the war is for our soul, then it forces every one of us to ask a very personal question. Which of our spiritual or personal battles are truly the ones worth fighting and worth winning?